The future, from the future to the past, implying taking somebody from the 21st century and taking him back to the 1st century AD, to the Colosseum of Rome, for example. It's like Herodotus, the guy we have called the father of history, the first historian. He said, "I don't believe it, but you can if you will." And this is what I say to you. He said that when he heard of the story or read of the story of the Phoenicians reporting back to Egypt after they'd circumnavigated it in about 600 BC, 2,200 years before the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama did it on his way to India and the Far East. He didn't believe it, but you can if you will. And no, I don't believe it. But I do believe that there are beings on other planets out into that cold void of space, whether they be an innocent worm or some warlike warrior of unknown description. And yet there is something peculiar about this piece of stonework on Hadrian's Wall. It's at the fort of Bird Oswald. And if you ever go into the museum and you say to the curator, that stonework looks like it's Inca from South America. And he said, yes, we've had that comment before. And that comment originally came from me about 20 to 30 years ago. But as you can see on that, it's a strange sort of brickwork, because the brickwork either side of it is absolutely higgledy-piggledy with lots of gaps between the stones. In other words, there's a good quarter inch of mortar between them. But these, there is no mortar. It's only a small piece of the wall. Actually, it's not the wall, it's the fort itself. And if I remember rightly, it's on the west wall of the fort, not the wall itself. And if you can see the stone, as you can actually, as I tried, to insert a credit card between the gaps, and you can't, and there's no mortar. Whereas in the stonework left and right, where's my finger? My stonework left and right, there's lots of mortar. So it doesn't make sense. And then when you look at it in more detail, you can see where they've cut the brick. Forget about the red mark. They've cut the brick like that for that to lay in. They put a little niche in there for that to lay in. They've put a big one there for this one to lay in, and a little one there for that stone to lay in, and over here on this side another one cut out, when in actual fact all they needed to do was to bash that with a hammer and that part would come off, and the ditto with that. In fact, you've got to cut this and shape it so accurately that you can't get a credit card through. So there's something almost Inca in that. As I've been to Peru and Machu Picchu and Cusco and seen the fantastic stonework of the Incas, you'll see why I am trying to put this similar. This is Inca stonework, and they excel in cutting out pieces from the stone, which must be tedious, and one mistake and they've got to start again. As you can see, we've got to force a cutout here and an angle there, an angle here and a cutout there. We've got a cutout here, and we've got a cutout there and a cutout here. And if one of them is out, then the others have got to change. So that is recognised Inca stonework, of about 1450, 1500 AD, whereas Hadrian's Wall is about 130, about 130, 120 AD. So how did the one know about the other? Perhaps they didn't. It's the most curious thing that they didn't, because it's so, not difficult, it's so compatible. And worse still, when I was in Cambodia at Angkor Wat, there was, in the great temple of Angkor, I noticed stonework of a similar pattern. I just couldn't believe that the people from Angkor Wat and Hadrian's Wall at different times had come up with the same stonework. One thing about it, which we can prove, is that we are interested in leaving our planet for other planets or other solar systems, because we're doing it right now. Why are we doing it? Well, we're doing it for two reasons. One, can we ever live there? Can we colonize it? And if we can colonize it, what is it we can take from there to be important, like iron, steel? And I've often wondered why it is that man has got this peculiar habit of seeking gold. It's a pretty thing and it's valuable. Well, we know it's valuable, but what use has it? It's got no use. Or has it? One thing about gold, it's very heavy. And one thing about mankind, we want to store it. There's Fort Knox, there's the Bank of England. There's tons of it. Over the thousands of years, man, from the ancient Egyptians, even the Celts, everybody's been collecting gold, making talks or statues to gods. The Incas were very good at it, so were the Aztecs. So much so that the Spanish shipped it across from Peru, up the Pacific coast, up to Panama, across the Isthmus, and then from Nombres de Dios to Spain. Tons of it. Drake stole 5 tons and 15 tons of silver from the Spanish at Nombres de Dios. But you can't eat gold. You can't put it on your bread unless it's butter. So what value has gold got? This might surprise you, but gold is the second best thing for creating nuclear fission. It has such a high density of atoms that it's second to none to uranium. Could it be that ancient visitors have come here long ago and left a message in our brains that we've got to collect gold for the gods? Are they the gods? Is it possible that one day they will come back and reap the harvest by taking the gold from Fort Knox and the Bank of England and all the other banks in the world? Because the gold will create energy. It's a thought. And one day archaeologists might turn up with something that says this came from outer space. Until then, I would like to record this because that's what it is. That's what Herodotus did. He didn't believe it, but he had the sense to record it and was proved wrong. So we're going on to the next picture, which is the White Horse at Uffington. I think it's Brittany Hughes, the lady that does documents on ancient Britain, and she said the White Horse at Uffington is a boundary marker between the tribes. Well, if it is, it can only be seen from the air. You see lots of postcards of it, but they're all taken from the air. If you see it from the one side, you see dangly bits, which are the legs. And you can only see the top bit, the body and the head, when you're directly above it. So why would they do a boundary marker for their enemies or their neighbours if it isn't going to show them anything. As you can see, the legs are dangling down the one side of the escarpment, and the head and the body can only be seen from the air. So what use the White Horse at Uffington? Then again, if we go to Peru, we have the Nazca lines. This is a photograph which I didn't take, but I've been there. And you're at about 800 feet flying over these things, which in this case you can't see very well. But if I take the camera closer into it, you can see, I hope, the shape of a bird. There it is, the hummingbird. Now to make those is quite easy. Geographical reason, the plains of Nazca, where all these things are, some of them were whales, spiders, monkeys. They're a tremendous size. And I've flown over about 800 feet, and they're specks down below, but big specks. And to make them is quite easy. Geologically, the plain is filled with a sort of grey sand, and on top of it are little black pebbles. I don't know what they are, but they look volcanic to me. But they're little black pebbles, and all you need literally is a broom, and you can push them through and you make a line. Except some of these lines and shapes are as long as airports. They're a tremendous length. As for plotting out the hummingbird, for example, yes, you can make it with a broom, but you've got to be able to plot out where to make it from, and it's big. An architect would have trouble trying to tell the people where to start pushing the broom. So they really are, and they do draw the tourists, they really are a corundum. I think that's the word. If you notice, I've got another shirt on today, another Chorus Virus Day of Solitude. However, back to the business. So here we've got a peculiarity. I don't know. The Inca, these people weren't that old. They weren't as old as the Egyptians. However, one day, as archaeologists will dig up something that says this is most peculiar. And until then, I don't believe it that people have been here. But there's a bit of a nudge to say they might have been way, way in the past and told us, collect gold. And from that day forth, both women, and especially women and men, have had a great desire for collecting gold. I hope you enjoyed that little story. Thank you very much. Failed to add, you wonder why I put a new shirt on for each episode. The reason being is it's easier to add them all together when the guy in the shirt is wearing with the right shirt. It's when you get me with a different shirt in an episode, you know something's gone terribly wrong. But hopefully it won't. Thank you again.